The hospital hallway smelled of antiseptic and recycled air. The soft hum of medical machines filled the silence between the footsteps of the night staff. Outside, the city's neon lights flickered faintly through the tall glass windows, casting long, thin shadows across the polished floor. Dr. Elias Wren barely noticed. He was too tired to notice anything except the ache in his legs and the pounding in his head. Elias had been on duty for over 36 hours. He had treated everything from high fevers to broken bones. And now, a group of patients from a recent spaceship accident was overwhelming the triage wing. The new arrivals were strange to him, not humans, at least not entirely. Their skin shimmered with faint, iridescent patterns, and their eyes reflected light in a way that made his stomach twist with unease and fascination. He had moved through the triage wing with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, adjusting IVs, and giving instructions to the medical assistants. He barely remembered the last time he had eaten. Coffee had been his only companion for the past day and a half, and even that was starting to lose its comforting warmth. Finally, he thought he could take a moment, just a few steps down the main hallway to reach the small rest area near the observation deck. But as he moved, the world began to tilt. The floor seemed to wobble beneath his feet. His vision blurred, and his knees threatened to buckle. He gripped the railing along the wall, trying to keep steady, but it was useless. He felt himself falling, a sudden and terrifying weightlessness that made his stomach leap into his throat. The bright ceiling lights streaked into lines, and he barely had time to think. Not now. Not here. Before everything went black. Elias hit the floor with a soft thud, the cold tiles biting against his cheek. For a moment, he felt the strange serenity that sometimes came in unconsciousness, as if the world had stopped just for him. Then a hand touched his wrist. Firm, warm, steady. "Don't go," a whisper said, soft but urgent. Elias's eyes flickered open, only a little, just enough to see a figure kneeling beside him. Her face was partially hidden by a hood, but he could see her eyes bright, sharp, and concerned. The subtle patterns of light across her skin indicated she was not entirely human, yet her expression was unmistakably familiar in its worry. "I'm here," she said again. "You're not alone." For a moment, Elias could not move. The dizziness clung to him like a heavy blanket, and his heart pounded in panic. Then he felt the warmth of her hand, steadying him, and something within him began to calm. He realized he could breathe again. Slowly, carefully, with her voice guiding him. You shouldn't be out here alone," she said. Her accent was soft, melodic, not quite human, but easy to understand. Elias tried to speak, but his throat felt dry, his words trapped. He managed a weak, "Not fine," she said sharply, but without anger. "You collapsed. That is not fine. Let me help." Her hands moved with confidence, adjusting the blanket she had pulled from a nearby bench to cover him. He could feel her energy calm but strong, like she had done this many times before. Somehow, in his exhausted state, her presence felt more powerful than any medicine he had ever administered. Slowly, he allowed himself to relax under her care. The world around him remained blurry, but he could make out the soft green glow of the triage monitors, the distant footsteps of a passing nurse, the quiet hum of the overhead lights. He could hear her breathing too, steady and reassuring. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Saren Vela," she said. I was part of the convoy you treated." Recognition sparked in his mind. The convoy. The accident. The strange passengers he had spent hours helping. They had been lucky. Humans had pulled them from near death after their ship had been caught in a hyperspace slipstream collapse. He remembered the fear in their eyes, the chaos in the triage wing, and now, seeing Saren kneeling beside him, he understood the debt of gratitude shining quietly in her gaze. You helped us," she said softly, almost like she was confessing, You saved my people. Elias tried to shrug, but the motion made his head spin. I just did my job. She shook her head. Humans, you don't just do your job. You risk everything for strangers. I don't know how to explain it. Her words lingered in the air. Elias felt the weight of them. Heavy, but warm. For a brief moment, he forgot the exhaustion, the dizziness, even the pain. He simply listened, as if hearing the truth of humanity from her lips was a balm he didn't know he needed. The hallway remained quiet around them, but not empty. A small medbot rolled by, paused, then moved on, its sensors detecting no immediate emergency. The world had slowed down just for this small moment between a human and an alien who had seen the best of him. Elias tried to stand, but the world tipped again. Saren's hands shot out, gripping his wrist, holding him steady. Not yet, she said. Her tone was gentle, but firm. Stay with me. Don't try to move until you can. He realized then how much he trusted her. The trust came naturally, without thought, without calculation. He could have been anyone on the floor, but with her, he felt safe. Minutes passed, though they seemed like hours. Slowly, carefully, she helped him to a nearby chair. His legs trembled under him, but he didn't care. He was alive. And someone cared enough to make sure he stayed that way. You've been working too hard, she said finally, studying him with eyes that seemed to see right into his fatigue. You need rest. More than coffee, more than a quick meal. I can't, he whispered. Her gaze softened. There will always be patience, but there won't always be you. Don't disappear on me, Elias. Not here. Not like this. The urgency in her voice made his chest tighten. He realized she wasn't just worried, she was afraid. Afraid of losing someone who had already risked so much for her people. And he understood. Somehow, in her concern, he felt the value of his own existence reflected back at him. He closed his eyes for a moment, leaning back in the chair, letting the exhaustion catch up. And for the first time in over a day, he allowed himself to simply rest, knowing that Saren would be there when he opened them again. When he awoke fully, hours later, the soft glow of the hallway lights had changed. Morning had arrived outside the tall windows, casting pale light over the tiles. Saren was still there, seated quietly beside him, reading something on a small data pad. She looked up and smiled faintly when she saw his eyes open. You made it, she said simply. Elias tried to sit up, but she reached out immediately, placing a hand on his shoulder to steady him. Slowly. You're stronger than this, but not invincible. He chuckled weakly, a sound he hadn't realized he could make. You've got a point. For the first time since the night began, the hospital didn't feel cold or overwhelming. It felt safe, warm. A place where humans and aliens, strangers and saviors, could meet and understand each other. Elias realized then that this moment, small as it was, marked something important. He had fainted in the hallway. Yes, but in doing so, he had found someone who cared enough to stop him from falling entirely. And in the quiet of that hospital morning, with her hand still resting lightly on his wrist, Elias felt that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone. Elias woke to the quiet beeping of the hospital monitors. The white light of the room was soft, filtered through the blinds. His head still throbbed slightly, and the memory of collapsing in the hallway pressed at the edges of his mind. He tried to sit up, only to feel a wave of dizziness. Before he could even reach for the bed rail, a familiar voice spoke, calm and steady. Take your time, Saren said, appearing at the side of the bed with a small tray of food. Her presence was comforting, like a tether to the world he had almost left. Elias blinked. You stayed? She gave him a small, almost shy smile. I didn't think you'd survive the night without someone watching. He tried to hide the smile forming on his lips. You could have gone back to your people. I could have, she admitted. But I didn't want to. Not after what happened. Elias remembered the wrecked convoy that had arrived at Horizon Point the night before. They had been in bad shape, ships torn apart by a slipstream accident, passengers injured or in shock, entire crews clinging to life. Humans had been the first to respond. And now Saren, one of those survivors, was here. Not out of obligation, but out of care. It made him realize something he had known but had never thought of in such a clear way. Humans didn't just survive, they acted. Even when it was dangerous, even when it didn't benefit them, humans helped. That simple, reckless courage had saved Saren and her people. Elias slowly sat up, letting Saren help him with the small motions. How is your convoy? He asked. Careful, not to sound weak. They're stable now, she said. Mostly. Some still need observation. But thanks to you and your team, most will recover fully. Her words warmed him. But they also brought a pang of guilt. He had been exhausted, overworked, and he had almost collapsed. And yet, he had saved lives. He had made a difference. Saren's eyes held gratitude, and Elias felt the truth of something that humans often ignored. Sometimes, survival wasn't enough. What mattered was how humans acted in the face of danger. Over the next few hours, Saren stayed by his side. They didn't speak much at first, sometimes just observing each other, sharing quiet moments. Elias noticed her subtle gestures. The way she adjusted the blanket, the careful way she measured the temperature of his tea, the way her eyes never left him entirely. He realized something else. Saren's species, unlike humans, were typically reserved, even distant. Physical contact was limited. Expressions of emotion were rare. And yet here she was, kneeling beside him, holding his wrist, keeping him steady. That simple act was a gift. One Elias didn't take lightly. Finally, curiosity got the better of him. Saren paused. You saved lives, my people, strangers. I've never understood humans like this before. Your courage, your compassion. It's frightening. And wonderful. Elias blinked. Frightening? Yes, she admitted. Because it's so uncalculated. So bold. Humans risk themselves for others without hesitation. My people calculate risk. Avoid danger. Protect ourselves first. But humans, you rush in. He smiled faintly, wincing at the slight headache. That's human nature, I guess. Sometimes, we don't even think. We just do what feels right. Her eyes softened. I understand now. I saw it yesterday, in the triage wing. Humans, working tirelessly, helping us when no one else would. You didn't even stop when you were exhausted. That left an impression. Elias felt a warmth in his chest. Not pride, exactly, but a deep satisfaction. The kind that came when someone truly recognized your effort. And more than that, he felt a connection forming small, fragile, but real. As the day went on, the hospital slowly woke. Other staff passed by, nodding politely, and medbots rolled quietly across the polished floors. Yet, for Elias and Saren, the world seemed to shrink to the small recovery room. The sunlight streaming through the blinds, and the quiet understanding that grew between them. I don't suppose humans ever get tired of being heroes? Saren asked, leaning back in the chair beside his bed. Some do, Elias admitted. Most just keep going. Because someone has to. She tilted her head, considering him. You're very brave. I think that's why I stayed. Because I needed to know that someone like you would survive this hospital, this city, this galaxy. Elias wasn't sure how to respond. Part of him wanted to shrug and say it was nothing, that anyone would have done the same. But he realized she didn't want that answer. She wanted honesty. I try, he said simply. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I fail, but I try. Her gaze softened, and she reached out again, placing a hand lightly on his arm. That's all any of us can do. Try. But it makes a difference. You make a difference, Elias. The words echoed in his mind. Make a difference. That was what humans did. That was what they had always done. And in that moment, with Saren watching him, he realized that perhaps humans could not only survive the galaxy, they could shape it, change it, leave a mark that others remembered. Later, a notification chimed from the hospital's central system. Elias frowned at the display. A distress signal had arrived from the region near the convoy's accident site. It was faint but persistent, a ripple in the hyperspace network. Saren's ears twitched slightly, a small gesture that Elias noticed immediately. It's the anomaly, she said quietly. The same one that caused our accident. It's growing. Elias frowned. Growing? But the area was secured after the accident. Something triggered it, she explained. The slipstream wasn't completely stabilized. Some automated systems might have malfunctioned. If we don't act, it could destabilize the entire corridor. Ships could be lost. He swallowed. We have to stop it? Yes, she said simply. We have to stop it. Elias felt a familiar spark of determination. Despite exhaustion, despite the lingering dizziness, he felt alive. Humans faced danger, and humans acted. The galaxy could throw anything at them, and they would respond. It was instinct. It was courage. It was humanity. And now, he realized, it wasn't just him. Saren would be there. Together, they could face the anomaly, whatever it was. He didn't know exactly what that meant yet. But he knew he wouldn't faint in the hallway this time. Not with her, by his side. The hours passed quickly. They prepared for the journey to the anomaly, coordinating with the hospital's AI, analyzing the data, and running simulations. Elias found himself leaning on Saren's insight into her people's technology, while she relied on his experience with human engineering and problem-solving. Their skills complemented each other in ways neither fully expected. Humans and aliens. Elias muttered at one point, adjusting a monitor. We make a good team. Saren smiled faintly. I suppose we do. Even if it is unusual. Unusual is often underestimated, he said, looking at her with a faint grin. And we humans. Her laugh was soft but genuine. It filled the room in a way that made the exhaustion in his bones feel lighter. For the first time in days, Elias felt something other than fatigue. Hope. Hope that they could fix the anomaly. Hope that the convoy would survive. Hope that humans fragile, reckless, determined humans could continue to make a difference in the galaxy. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the hospital floor, Elias stood near the observation deck window, watching the city lights flicker. Saren joined him quietly, standing close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Neither spoke at first. Words weren't necessary. The bond formed in the hospital hallway. The trust born of shared struggle lingered between them. Finally, Elias whispered, almost to himself, "Thank you for being here." Saren's hand brushed lightly against his. "You would have done the same for me," she said. "And that's why I stayed." Elias nodded. He realized something important. Humanity's strength wasn't just in their ability to survive. It was in their ability to care, to act, to stay, even when exhaustion, danger, or fear told them to stop. And in that quiet moment, as the night settled over the city and the hospital, he understood that the galaxy was a little safer, a little brighter, because humans existed and because they refused to give up on anyone. The slipstream anomaly was growing. By the time Elias and Saren arrived at the observation deck of Horizon Point, the data streaming across the holographic display made it clear. The situation was worse than anyone had anticipated. Bright, jagged lines of energy arced across the map of the trade corridor. The automated mining arrays that had once been harmless were now destabilized, tearing the slipstream apart like threads of cloth. Ships in the vicinity could be lost if the anomaly expanded any further. Elias studied the data, his mind racing despite the lingering fatigue. This is bad, he said, pointing to a cluster of glowing red signals. If this keeps growing, entire vessels could be destroyed before we even reach them. Saren nodded. It's the same phenomenon that caused my convoy's accident. Something triggered the arrays to overcompensate. They are now beyond control. Only a direct intervention can stabilize them. Elias clenched his fists. So, we need to go there. Yes, Saren said simply. The arrays cannot be overridden remotely. The slipstream is too unstable. Only someone inside the control hub can shut them down. And it will be dangerous. Radiation levels, energy surges, exposure could be lethal. Elias swallowed hard. Danger wasn't new to him. He had faced it before, but this felt different. This wasn't just about saving lives in a hospital or stabilizing a convoy. This was about touching the fabric of space itself and surviving. Saren tilted her head. We'll go together. My physiology can withstand part of the energy field. You can handle the mechanical interface. Together, we stand a chance. He looked at her, admiration mixing with a surge of determination. Then, we do it. Together. The journey to the anomaly was tense. Their vessel, a small, reinforced shuttle, cut through the trade corridor with precision, its shields flickering occasionally as radiation pulses struck the hull. The vast emptiness of space was illuminated by distant stars, but the beauty offered no comfort. The anomaly was alive, writhing with energy. And the closer they got, the more its power pulsed through the hull. Elias monitored the sensors, adjusting shields and rerouting power as needed. Saren stood beside him, analyzing the energy patterns and guiding him through the safest trajectory. Their coordination was almost instinctive. You handle the ship, she said. I'll handle the arrays. But be ready. We might not get a second chance. Elias nodded. I've got this. And I've got you. Saren glanced at him, just for a moment, her eyes softening. I know. That's enough. The shuttle shuddered violently as a sudden surge of energy blasted through the corridor. Warning lights flashed red. Elias gritted his teeth, stabilizing the controls. Hold on, he shouted, gripping the console as the shuttle rocked. Saren braced herself against the wall. The core is just ahead. We need to dock manually. The automated port can't handle the instability. Elias swallowed his fear. Humans had survived worse, he reminded himself. Humans acted when others hesitated. And he had Saren by his side. Together, they could face this. They docked at the edge of the anomaly with precision, the shuttle clinging to the unstable hull like a bird perched on a gusting wind. The moment the airlock sealed, the hum of energy outside became almost deafening. Sparks danced along the walls of the docking bay, a visual reminder of the danger lurking just beyond. Elias and Saren suited up, their protective gear shimmering faintly under the light. The gravity field inside the docking bay was weak, making every movement feel heavier. Saren led the way, her stride calm and confident, despite the danger. Elias followed, trusting her guidance implicitly. "This way," she said, pointing toward the core chamber. "The main control hub is just beyond this corridor. Radiation spikes will be strongest there. Stay close. Stay close. Stay close." Elias nodded, adjusting his visor to filter the erratic energy surges. He had always been brave, but now he realized that courage alone would not be enough. He needed focus, skill, and teamwork. He had all three, but he also had something he had learned in the hospital hallway. The corridor leading to the core chamber was treacherous. Energy arcs snapped across the walls, pulsing with a rhythm that made the floor vibrate beneath their boots. Every step required precision. Every motion, calculation. Suddenly, a surge of power threw Elias against the wall. Pain shot through his arm as his console sparked and shorted. "Elias!" Saren called, rushing to him. She grabbed his wrist, steadying him just as she had in the hospital hallway. I'm fine," he gasped, though the truth was different. His heart raced, and his head spun. The anomaly's energy was overwhelming, threatening to crush them both. "You're not fine," Saren said firmly, holding his gaze. "Stay with me. Don't let go. Not now." Her grip was strong, unwavering. For a moment, Elias thought of the hallway, of the day she had saved him when he could not stand, and that memory gave him strength. He straightened, shaking off the dizziness, and nodded. "Okay," he said. "I'm with you." They reached the core chamber, a vast space filled with humming machines and pulsing energy conduits. The center was dominated by the main interface of the automated mining array, its controls glowing erratically. Energy arcs shot from the walls to the core, creating a dangerous, unpredictable field. "Stay close," Saren warned. "Radiation spikes will be highest here. I can shield part of the energy, but you'll need to work quickly." Elias stepped forward, his hands steady despite the fear tightening in his chest. Humans acted when others froze. Humans endured. Humans survived, and sometimes, that survival changed the universe around them. He interfaced with the core, fingers flying over controls, rerouting power, stabilizing the arrays. Sparks and arcs of energy leapt dangerously close. Saren positioned herself to shield him from the worst of it. Her hands, glowing faintly, with a bioluminescent energy that absorbed part of the radiation. The core shuddered violently. Alarms screamed. Elias felt himself slipping as a pulse of energy blasted toward him. Saren reached out instinctively, grabbing his wrist. "Don't go!" she shouted. The words were the same as that day in the hospital hallway, but now they carried more weight, more urgency, more truth. Elias focused, drawing strength from her grip, from her trust, from the fact that someone believed he could succeed. Humans had faced the impossible countless times. And now, here, at the edge of space and energy, he refused to fail. Minutes felt like hours. Elias worked tirelessly at the interface, following Saren's guidance. Together, they rerouted power, shut down rogue commands, and stabilized the slipstream. The energy arcs slowed, the pulsing dimmed, and finally, the anomaly stopped growing. Elias collapsed to one knee, exhausted, but alive. Saren immediately knelt beside him, still holding his wrist, ensuring he was steady. "You did it," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. He looked at her, breathing heavily. "We survived," Saren smiled faintly. "Not just survived. We made a difference. Your people would be proud." Elias felt a surge of pride, not just in himself, but in humanity. Humans did not always win. Humans did not always survive. But humans acted. Humans risked themselves for others. And sometimes, that courage and care could change the course of events, even in the vast, cold reaches of space. The journey back to Horizon Point was quiet. Elias leaned back in the shuttle, letting exhaustion wash over him. Saren sat beside him, her hand lightly brushing his, as if to remind him that he was not alone. You were amazing," she said finally. "I've never seen anyone handle something like that so calmly. So human." Elias chuckled weakly. "It's what humans do. We keep going, even when we're scared, even when it's impossible." She nodded. "I see that now. And I'm glad I was here with you. To see it. To help. To 10. To 10 we're see. To 4. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, and Elias realized that this vast, dangerous galaxy was a place where humans could truly shine, not through sheer power, not through domination, but through courage, care, and the refusal to abandon those in need. And now, with Saren by his side, he knew they could face whatever came next. Together, humans and aliens, courage and trust, standing against the unknown. For the first time in days, Elias allowed himself to relax completely. They had faced the threat. They had survived. And humanity, reckless, determined, compassionate humanity, had once again made a difference in the galaxy. The shuttle rocked gently as Elias and Saren approached Horizon Point. Outside the viewport, the stars streaked past, and the glow of the space station welcomed them back like a distant promise of safety. Elias sat back, exhausted. Every muscle in his body ached, and his mind still buzzed from the energy surges of the anomaly. Yet, for the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to breathe without tension. They had stabilized the slipstream. Ships that could have been destroyed were safe. Lives had been saved. Saren remained beside him, quiet but alert. Her hand brushed lightly against his as she studied the controls, ensuring their return journey stayed smooth. It was a small gesture, but Elias felt its weight. She had been his anchor at the anomaly, just as she had been in the hospital hallway. "You handled yourself well," Saren said softly, her voice carrying a tone of admiration. Elias didn't hear often. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted. Humans had a tendency to act alone, but Elias had learned something vital in the past days. Trust made their actions stronger. Courage was important, but courage combined with trust could move mountains or, in their case, stabilize a collapsing slipstream. Saren's gaze met his. "You stayed calm, even when everything was against you. Even when the energy spikes nearly overwhelmed us. That's remarkable." Elias shrugged, wincing slightly at the soreness in his shoulders. "I've learned to focus when it matters. When others are counting on me. Humans, we do what we must." Her expression softened. "I understand now. And I want to be like that. Courageous. Caring. Able to act when it matters. You've shown me what humans are capable of, Elias. You've shown me hope." The words warmed him in a way he couldn't describe. Humans often spoke of survival and action, but rarely did they recognize the ripple effect of their courage. Saren's admiration made him realize something profound. Humanity wasn't just strong. It inspired others. Even aliens who were cautious and calculating could feel the weight of human determination. The shuttle docked at Horizon Point's bay with a soft hiss. Automated systems secured the craft, and the crew began preparing for their return to the station's main level. Elias stood, his body trembling slightly from fatigue. Saren was already at his side, steadying him. "You should rest," she said, placing a hand on his arm. "Your body needs it after all that effort." "I will," Elias replied, though he couldn't help but glance at the reports on the console. The anomaly had been stabilized, but the ripple effects would require monitoring. Humans never stopped when danger lingered. And neither would he. Saren's hand remained on his arm, a quiet reminder that he didn't have to face everything alone. Inside the station, the hallway was quieter than it had been during the chaos of the anomaly. The lights were soft, the hum of machinery gentle. Elias and Saren walked together, discussing the recovery plans for the affected ships and coordinating with the medical teams who had treated the alien convoy. Your people, they're lucky, Elias said thoughtfully. Not every species has humans willing to risk themselves to save others. Saren tilted her head, a faint smile playing at her lips. Perhaps, but I think we're all lucky. I've seen something in your people, something rare. Courage, loyalty, compassion that doesn't require calculation. Humans, you care, even when it's difficult, even when it's dangerous. That is extraordinary. Elias felt a deep pride in her words. Humans often acted in ways others could not understand, but that was part of their strength. The galaxy might have technology, power, and strategy, but humans had something else. The willingness to risk themselves for the good of others. That made them unique. That made them vital. And now, standing with Saren, he understood something more. Humans didn't just survive. They inspired. They created hope where none existed. They made a difference that echoed far beyond their immediate actions. The rest of the evening passed quietly. Elias checked in with the medical teams, ensured the alien convoy had all the support they needed, and slowly allowed himself to rest. Saren stayed nearby, observing him with that same quiet attention that had saved him in the hallway and at the anomaly. Finally, they found a moment of stillness in the observation deck. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, and the city lights of Horizon Point shimmered faintly below. You know, Saren said softly, I've never seen humans like this before. I thought you were reckless, impulsive, but you're more than that. You're strong, not just physically, but in spirit. Elias smiled faintly, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in days. We do what we must. And sometimes, we inspire. I never thought about it that way. I just act. That's what makes it remarkable, Saren said. It's effortless for you, yet it changes everything. He looked at her, truly looked. For the first time, without exhaustion clouding his mind, she had been by his side through fear, danger, and uncertainty. She had steadied him when he could not stand, guided him when the stakes were highest, and reminded him of the value of human courage. He began, hesitating. Words were hard after everything they had endured. But he knew one truth. Humans acted for others. Humans fought for life. And humans sometimes found connection, even in the darkest moments. I'm glad you stayed, he said finally, quietly, but with meaning. Saren reached out, lightly brushing her hand against his wrist. I'm glad too. You reminded me that courage is not just physical. It's about caring. And you care more than anyone I've met. The moment stretched. Outside, the stars pulsed faintly in the void, and for a second, it felt as if time had slowed. Elias realized something profound. He was not alone. He never had been. Humanity's strength wasn't just in facing danger, it was in connecting, in inspiring, in standing together when the universe tried to pull them apart. He took a deep breath, allowing the fatigue, fear, and adrenaline to fall away. For the first time since collapsing in the hospital hallway, he felt fully present. Saren's hand remained on his wrist, a silent reassurance. A reminder that he had survived, that humans endured, that courage and care could change lives. Thank you, he said again softly. Not just for saving him, but for showing him that the galaxy could be brighter because humans existed. She smiled faintly. No. Thank you, Elias, for reminding me that courage and hope are universal, that even in the darkest moments, humans can shine. And Elias realized she was right. Humans had always survived, Humans had always acted. Humans had always stood for others. And in the quiet of Horizon Point, with Saren by his side, he felt that their actions, small, brave, compassionate, could echo across the galaxy. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the station, vast and cold. Yet for the first time, Elias did not feel small. He felt human. He felt alive. And he knew that wherever the galaxy took him next, he would face it with courage, care, and a steady hand, just as humans always had. Saren squeezed his wrist lightly, a gesture of shared understanding. Elias looked at her. And in that look, they both understood something unspoken. Humanity's strength was not just survival. It was hope, courage, and connection. And that strength was unstoppable. The galaxy was wide, dangerous, and unpredictable. But humans were ready. And together, they would face whatever came next.